Welcome to the deep dive. We've got some really fascinating, maybe unusual materials for you this time.
Definitely unusual.
Yeah, a listener sent us excerpts from a YouTube transcript, the video. 482 PLB, C280P2, Papiu Francisek ni Uveye, operator Nisa Zoni Camila Chichos Metoda Grifasi.
It's a bit of a mouthful.
It is. It's from the Calogero Grifasi Investigations Polski channel.
So, yeah, might need to buckle up for this one.
I think so. This deep dive, it really takes us into some, well, extraordinary territory.
Right.
Our goal here is just to explore the claims made in this transcript, things about Pope Francis's supposed death, his current state.
Yeah.
And some really, out there interpretations.
Yeah, definitely out there. And just to be clear, we're here to understand what's being said, not, confirm or deny it ourselves.
Exactly. Just presenting the information from the source.
Okay, so the transcript, it starts with a remote viewing session, apparently April 28th, 2025. Let's get right into that. What did the remote viewer supposedly see about Pope Francis? Okay, so this session, said to be 4:10 p.m. The remote viewer reported seeing two distinct figures.
Yeah.
Both resembling Pope Francis.
Two.
Okay. The first one was described as having a very high percentage of human DNA. Initially, they said, 100% human.
Pure human, right?
But then they kind of revised that, added something reptile mixed in.
Something reptile mixed in. Wow, okay. That definitely catches your attention. And the second Pope Francis, what about that one?
Well, that one was described as completely different. Mechanical, an artificial creation.
Mechanical.
Yeah, no life force, no human DNA mentioned. The viewer even noted, a sense of mechanics, actual metallic sounds.
A mechanical pope. Okay, you really don't hear that every day. What about, energetically? How did they feel? Was there a difference?
Oh, a huge contrast, apparently. The first figure, the, let's say, humanish one,
Yeah.
that one had a clear energy, a life force. But the second one, the mechanical pope, it was described as just devoid of life, like hitting a solid wall energetically, impenetrable.
Huh. So we have this idea presented. Two popes. One, well, biological, but with that reptile twist, and the other, like a robot pope.
Essentially, yes,
Yeah.
an automaton of some kind.
It certainly opens up some, interesting lines of thought, doesn't it? Again,
Yeah.
not endorsing, just looking at the claims.
And it's fascinating how these claims often tap into, existing ideas or anxieties, stories about artificial beings, hidden influences. They've been around forever.
True.
So looking at this, it's helpful to see it maybe in that broader context of, well, human imagination and belief systems.
Right. Okay, so then the transcript moves on to the whereabouts, the condition of the actual Pope Francis, or at least the one identified as more human. Where's he supposed to be?
The perception was Pope Francis in a beautiful big garden, but not on Earth.
Not on Earth.
No, somewhere in space, outside what was called Earth's vibrational field. He was said to feel at home there.
At home.
Yeah, in contemplation and appearing very good, very healthy, full of life.
Healthy and full of life. But somewhere else.
And apparently he'd been there for quite a long time already.
A garden in space.
Yeah.
Contemplating. That's a vivid picture. What kind of feeling, what vibration did this place have, did they say?
They specifically mentioned a sense of big peace there, a profound peace.
Okay.
When you hear terms like vibration in these contexts, it's usually about that perceived, energetic or emotional quality. Very subjective, of course.
Understood. Subjective. Okay, now the timeline. This gets interesting. The official announcement of Pope Francis's death was Monday, April 21st, 2025. Easter Monday.
Correct.
But the remote viewer felt differently.
Yes, very strongly. The feeling was that the real Pope Francis, the one with human DNA, had actually passed away much earlier than that.
Much earlier.
Yeah, the sense was his spirit, his essence, had already been in that garden place for a significant time before the announcement was ever made.
And the timing of that announcement, Easter Monday, resurrection symbolism and all that, just a coincidence in their view.
Oh, no. The remote viewer felt very strongly it was intentional, not accidental at all.
Intention.
The interpretation in the transcript is that announcing it on Easter Monday, such a significant religious day, that was a deliberate choice. For a specific reason.
Okay, what reason? What effect was that timing supposed to have?
The transcript suggests it was meant to amplify the feelings of loss, to sort of embed negative energy, sadness, grief, sympathy into the collective consciousness of believers.
Embed negative energy. How?
The viewer even describes seeing it visually, like the news spreading as a light grayish light affecting people of faith.
Wow. And these negative energies, they called them angers, right? What was the point of these angers? What were they trying to do?
They were seen as attempts to disrupt or block what they called church energies, the spiritual energy associated with believers.
Okay.
So on a maybe broader, perhaps metaphorical level, announcing it on Easter Monday was seen as a way to kind of counteract the joyful vibes of the holiday, replace them with lower emotional states, like sadness and mourning.
So the idea is just announcing his death on, say, a random Tuesday wouldn't have had the same punch.
Precisely. The Easter Monday timing, according to this view, was meant to heighten the emotional response, create a more powerful energetic effect.
Which brings up the big question, why? What's the motivation behind trying to manipulate global energy like that? What's the goal supposed to be?
Well, the transcript suggests the goal was to diminish joy, introduce those lower vibrations, maybe to maintain some kind of control or influence. And, from a sociological angle, major events, especially tied to religious symbols, can have really big psychological effects on huge numbers of people.
That's true. Okay, let's shift to another point in the transcript, a prophecy. It says, the last pope will lead the church during a great turmoil that will lead to the fall of Rome and the end of the papacy. How did the video interpret this?
The remote viewer saw this prophecy as basically a tool designed to generate chaos, confusion, maybe an informational hurricane, as they put it.
An informational hurricane.
Yeah, among believers. The goal in this view is just to create uncertainty and fear about the church's future.
So it's less about a real prediction and more like a manufactured narrative designed for an emotional reaction.
That's exactly the suggestion. The transcript even posits that more prophecies like this will be, artificially created and sort of dosed out strategically.
A ghost.
Yeah, to keep those lower emotional energies going, maintain fear about where the church is headed.
This really ties back to what you said earlier about manipulating energy through the death announcement timing. It feels like a running theme here, this idea of influencing collective emotion.
It absolutely does. I mean, if you think about the power of suggestion, how narratives work, especially within established belief systems, using scary prophecies could be seen as just another way to sway collective thought and feeling.
Makes sense.
And prophecies, historically, have always played a huge role in shaping how societies feel, what they expect, what they worry about.
Right. Okay, the deep dive then mentions another really famous one, the Prophecy of Malachi. Specifically, that final Latin text about destroying the city of Seven Hills, final judgment, under Peter the Roman. How's that one interpreted?
Pretty much the same way. The remote viewer felt these words had the exact same goal as a previous prophecy.
Yeah.
Instill fear, maintain control.
Just more fear-mongering.
Exactly. This one was described as feeling empty, dark, lacking any real substance or power behind it.
Empty and dark. That's quite a description. What was the intended effect on people who believe it?
The perceived effect was, again, fear and submission, maybe encouraging people to stick with the current religious structure because they're afraid of what might happen otherwise.
Okay. And then there's this really striking image, a soap bubble about to burst. What did that represent?
The remote viewer used that soap bubble image as an analogy for the current state of religion and the control supposedly exerted by these reptilian energies they keep mentioning.
Reptilian energies again.
Yes. The feeling was that this whole system is fragile. It's nearing an end. And these controlling forces, they sense that their stable energy supply is about to be disrupted.
And what's making the bubble burst? What's causing this feeling of an end?
The transcript hints that it might be linked to the decline in devoted churchgoers. Fewer people actively participating and believing means fewer energetic resources for these controlling forces to, feed on.
So they're panicking and trying to stockpile energy, as the transcript put it.
That's the idea presented, yes. This perceived panic and energy stockpiling is seen as a reaction to dwindling numbers.
So it's like people are waking up, maybe disengaging from the old structures, and that's causing this shift.
That's certainly one way to interpret the remote viewer's perception. And, shifts in religious belief, declining participation in traditional faiths, these are complex social trends we do see happening in many places.
Interesting. Okay, let's switch gears slightly. The geopolitical situation. After the announcement of Pope Francis's death, did the remote viewer see any big global impact?
Actually, no. According to their assessment, the announcement didn't really have any substantial or lasting effect on the global geopolitical stage.
Really? Just nothing?
It was described as more like just an event, a page in the calendar. Sure, it was an opportunity for world leaders to be seen, make statements.
Right, the usual photo ops.
Exactly. But no major political shifts were triggered by it, according to this view.
So no hidden ripples, no major turbulence politically.
The perception was largely symbolic impact, not deep, lasting geopolitical consequences. Now, the actual influence of religious leaders on global politics is, of course, a really complex subject with many different views.
Understood. Okay, now the next papal conclave electing a new pope, that takes an interesting turn in this esoteric interpretation. What did the remote viewer sense about that?
The feeling conveyed was that the outcome is already decided, predetermined.
Already decided.
Yeah, and the whole conclave event itself will just be essentially a show, theater for the public.
Wow. So who gets chosen then?
The prediction is the next pope will be about 70% human.
70%, not 100.
70% human, male, and someone they already know, someone already chosen by whoever is perceived to be pulling the strings.
70% human. Okay. Any other details? Like, what does he look like?
Just a vague mention of silver hair and glasses.
Yeah.
But the main point was the emphasis on the selection not being what it seems publicly.
A pre-selected pope. 70% human. That definitely goes against the grain of how we usually think about the conclave. What do we even make of a claim like that?
Well, I mean, historically, electing a pope has always involved politics, strategy within the church. That's known.
Sure.
But this idea of it being predetermined by some, external or hidden force, that's a very specific interpretation coming out of this particular remote viewing session.
Right. Okay, the deep dive then talks about symptoms of the end of an era. For the Catholic Church, the papacy, what were these signs of decline they perceived?
The viewer sensed a change. Stirrings, tremors,
Yeah.
indicating a decline. And it was contributed to people becoming more aware of manipulation.
People waking up again.
Yes. But the view is that it won't be like a sudden crash, more a gradual shift with more people just leaving the faith, drifting away.
And what's supposed to replace the current structure eventually? Something totally new.
The prediction is the current form gets replaced by something else. Maybe even a sudden revelation designed to pull people back in. People who missed the old structure.
A revelation.
Yeah. But the analogy used was like just changing the decorations or changing the theater set.
Ah, so a change on the surface maybe.
Yeah.
But the underlying stuff like belief, authority, that might just continue.
That's what the transcript suggests.
Yeah.
It points to this, human tendency to look for a leader, maybe avoid taking full personal responsibility. And systems like religion can tap into that. These patterns are seen as really ingrained, built up over centuries, likely to persist in some form.
That raises a big question, though. What kind of revelation could possibly pull people back like that? And why do we seem to have this pull towards external authority figures?
Well, psychologically, belief systems, authority figures,
Yeah.
they can offer structure, comfort, a sense of belonging, meaning. They fulfill certain needs.
Right.
As for a future revelation, that's purely speculative in the transcript.
Yeah.
But presumably, it would have to resonate with those deep human needs for guidance and meaning.
Okay, near the end, the transcript gives some advice. What people can do to free themselves. What's the main message there?
It's really about personal empowerment.
Mm.
The core message is, wake up. Trust yourself, your own inner guidance. Realize the power you're looking for outside is actually within you.
Trust yourself.
Yeah. And it talks about cutting the anchors. Those are the, programs, beliefs, information you've absorbed over time.
And how do you cut these anchors? What's the method?
The idea is basically self-awareness,
Mm.
focusing inward, cultivating your own inner power, your own light, you could say.
Okay.
And as you do that, these external anchors, they just naturally weaken and dissolve because you're not feeding them your energy anymore.
So stop feeding the external stuff, focus inward.
Exactly. Shift focus from popes, prophecies, institutions, back to your own potential, your own inner resources.
So it's about taking back responsibility for your own beliefs, finding that strength inside.
Precisely. And the transcript suggests this individual awakening, this self-work, it will spread organically through vibration, not force.
Yeah.
No need to convince anyone.
Interesting. Now, there were specific questions from someone named Robert in the session. The first was about a Nostradamus prophecy.
Ah, yes. The prophecy went, through the death of a very old pope, a Roman of good age will be elected, of whom it will be said that he weakens his self-activity. See, but he will sit long and will be in venomous activity.
Venomous activity. Okay. How is that interpreted? Same theme.
Pretty much. The remote viewer saw it as just another fear-inducing statement lacking real power. They even visualized, again, a reptilian figure in papal clothes associated with it.
Reptilian figure again. Consistent, at least. So, same impact intended. Fear.
Yes, viewed as another tactic. Generate fear, manipulate beliefs, not a genuine prediction. And, interpreting prophecies is always tricky, full of symbolism.
Right. Robert then asked for a comparison between the funerals of John Paul II and Pope Francis, but on an esoteric, energetic level. What did they find?
Okay, so the viewer gave this energetic rating. John Paul II's funeral generated, they said, an energy level of 10.
10.
Pope Francis's funeral, only a 2.
Wow, from 10 down to 2. That's a huge drop.
A really stark difference. And it was interpreted as showing a big decrease in the amount of energy that was, well, harvested from the event.
Harvested. Any reason given for that drop? Why less energy harvested?
It was linked back to that idea of fewer truly devoted churchgoers, a lower collective emotional output, less energetic fuel compared to the time of John Paul II's death.
Which, thinking back, was a massive global event.
It really was. The scale of mourning and participation was huge.
Okay. Lastly, Robert asked about the ceremony of Recognito, opening the Holy Door December 24th, 2024. Any connection to Pope Francis's health or death?
The insight shared there was a feeling that punishment was involved.
Punishment.
Yeah, stemming from Pope Francis supposedly disagreeing with some plan, a plan by those dark reptilian energies.
Ah.
The interpretation was basically Francis had cooperated before, maybe within certain limits, but he resisted further demands connected to the specific ceremony.
Then that resistance led to
His elimination, according to the remote viewer.
So a perceived internal conflict. Refusal to comply leads to being removed. That's the interpretation.
That's the interpretation presented, yes. Suggesting a power dynamic where resisting these perceived controllers had, well, the ultimate consequence for him.
It paints a picture of internal struggle.
Which, of course, can happen within any large, powerful institution. History shows that.
Okay, so the host speaker in the original video, they offer some final thoughts. They emphasize how these fear-based prophecies can get into our subconscious, influence how we create reality.
Yeah.
And the advice is basically, be careful where you put your attention. Stop feeding these negative narratives.
And the remote viewer really doubles down on that, stressing, stop giving away your energy, your attention. Recognize how valuable they are.
Right.
The key is turning inward, illuminating yourself, releasing those limiting beliefs, those anchors.
It's a really strong message about taking back your own power, being conscious about what you give your mental energy to.
Absolutely. And the final thought offered is that this whole process, this individual self-discovery, it just spreads naturally. You don't have to push it on anyone.
It spreads outward organically.
Exactly.
Wow. Well, thank you for walking us through all of that. It was certainly unique and definitely thought-provoking material.
A pleasure. It's quite a journey into some unconventional ideas.
It really is. So just to kind of recap this deep dive for everyone listening, we went through some incredibly out there claims about Pope Francis.
Yeah.
A possible double, his maybe current location out in space somewhere, the supposed hidden meanings behind his death announcement timing.
And we looked at those esoteric interpretations of various prophecies, both well-known and maybe less so.
Right. And that recurring call for individual empowerment, focusing inward, self-awareness.
I think the key themes that really stand out are, 1, the very subjective nature of these kinds of remote viewing interpretations.
Definitely.
2, the potential power of narratives, especially scary ones, to influence collective feelings and beliefs. And 3, that constant emphasis on personal agency, taking back your own focus.
It absolutely gives you, the listener, a lot to chew on. And, given these really extraordinary interpretations we've just discussed, it does make you wonder, doesn't it? What other long-held beliefs, maybe in your own life, might be worth taking a closer look at, a more critical examination?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And maybe also ask yourself, what could happen if you consciously shifted some of the energy you normally give to all these external stories?
Yeah.
And instead directed it towards understanding your own inner world, your own potential.
Something to think about. Thanks again for diving deep with us today.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening. If you have sources, weird transcripts, anything you'd like us to explore, definitely send them our way. Until our next exploration, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep diving deeper.